Welcome to another edition of the Sales and Marketing Power Hour with your host, Carol Morgan with Denim Marketing and Kimberly Mackey with New Home Solutions Consulting.
Let's get this party started. You guys ready?
Ready.
Okay. All right. Well, today, of course, we are talking about creating urgency in the active adult buyer, and even who the heck is the active adult buyer today. So we got a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to get to everything. Of course, we want to make sure that we let you guys know that we continue the conversation where all the cool kids hang out in the Sales and Marketing Power Hour on Facebook. So if you're not part of this, then by all means, jump in there. This is where you can find us at Sales Marketing Power Hour. There's no and in it. I don't know why there's no and in it, but I guess maybe to make it fit.
I don't know. That's just how it is.
That's how it is. So Sales Marketing Power Hour, just look it up in the groups on Facebook. Make sure you join us, and not only join, like
participate.
Chat. Yes, we love to hear
Join
from
and
everybody
participate.
in there. And we get a lot of participation, so it's great. Ms. Morgan, would you like to kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I can kick us off. So I'm Carol Morgan, president and founder of Denim Marketing, based in Metro Atlanta. I think that I'm going to cater my who I am a little differently today and just talk about some of what we're doing in the active adult space. So we currently work for Coulter Homes and represent their Crestwood, Georgia communities, which are Crestwood, Georgia at Twin Lakes is one of them, and Crestwood, Peachtree City is the other one at present. I know they've got some other stuff in the pipeline getting ready to come up. So that's a lot of fun. And then we work with Triton Homes as well, which builds 55 plus communities, and those are Epcon communities. So got a connection to Rob through those. And then we have several other builders we work with who are doing age targeted or age restricted communities. So related to the 55 plus market, we do a lot of marketing, blogging, social media, press releases, scoring coverage in the local paper, and just a lot of branding and positioning. And I guess my contact number and information is on screen if you want to reach me. I will turn it over to Kimberly for her to introduce herself.
So, well, I am Kimberly Mackey. For those of you who don't know me, my company is New Home Solutions Consulting, and I am a management consultant in the home building world. I work with home builders and developers of all size across the U.S. And in this instance, I actually started in an active adult area. So it's pretty cool for me to come full circle. But I work with builders to make sure that sales is the engine that drives the train rather than running it off the tracks. So not only is it important for us to have sales, but we need to make them profitable, and we need to make sure that the systems are in place to support those sales so that the buyers have a great customer experience. So if I can help you in any way to help build that customer experience, help you connect the dots with sales, your sales team, or throughout the company with the processes and the systems, please feel free to reach out to me. It's interesting. Usually I do have somebody that I'm working with actively in the active adult market. Right now, I have more age targeted builders that I'm working with. So that changes our positioning and what we're talking about just slightly. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then without further ado, I want to introduce our guest. Thank you both for being with us today and sharing your knowledge with us. We've got two very active members who play in this space. So Rob, why don't we kick it off with you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, great. Thank you for having me. Very much appreciate being invited to participate. This topic obviously is one for us that hits right close to home. Our company was founded in 1986. We are headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. And all we've ever done is build for the 55 plus space, homes that are very popular with that market. So it's the only thing we build corporately. We build in Columbus, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Indianapolis. And then we also are a franchise company. So we have 71 franchise builders in 30 states around the country, all building product that is very popular with this segment of the market.
So, well, thank you for being with us for sure. And, your boots on the ground experience is going to come in very handy in this conversation. And then Cameron Munro is with 55places.com. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. They really probably the broadest site dedicated to this that I think I've ever seen. So, Cameron?
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. Hi, Carol. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
My name's Cameron. I work for 55places.com. We're a Chicago-based company that was started about 14 years ago by a former Del Weber, and really with the intent to, put all of the content and information that you'd ever want to find while doing your research as a consumer about active adult communities, whether they're actually 55 age restricted or age targeted. We've got them all on there, and got the Crestwind communities, the Del Webs, that kind of stuff. A lot of the Epcons, if not all of them. So my background is over 15 years in active adult real estate. Started with Del Webb out in Southern California for 7 years, and worked for a few other builders, Robeson Communities, out here locally for me in Phoenix, Arizona. I've done the resale side, so kind of had a pretty good, experience across the industry in this space, always with the active adult buyer. So excited to chat more about that and get into some questions with the panel or with the audience here, hopefully.
Well, again, thank you very much for being here. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. Again, the chat is open. Don't wait on a Q&A at the end. If you've got questions, comments, stories, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. And Carol will be monitoring that as we go through. So we'll make sure that we try to address any questions that are in there. Our next Power Hour is going to be August 20th. So we're going to skip July. Carol apparently is going to the beach. I
am.
Yeah, I'm working all the way through. So July got really stacked for us. And I know for all of you too. So giving you a little bit of break there, and we will see you back on August 20th. I think our topic, if memory serves, Carol, is pants optional.
Pants optional. Yeah. Working remotely, which, so many people are working in hybrids now, part in the office, part at home. So we'll talk a lot about that. And this is the rebirth of an IBS session. So if you all missed this at IBS, this is Stuart Platt from Outhouse, Greg Bray from Blue Tangerine, Jimmy Diffie from Boca Group, and Kevin Weitzel from Outhouse as well. So it's going to be a power-packed, fun discussion about, how those companies have been working from home, because I think they've all three been remote for years. So it'll be fun. Mark your calendar.
Are we keeping it PG?
Some of those people I noticed, that I mentioned, I don't know if they can, but we're going to try. We'll try to keep it PG. So
If Kevin's going to be on there, you never know.
You never know.
Exactly. You never know what Kevin's going to say. Is Kevin here with us today?
Yeah,
I think he said yes. Yeah, I haven't looked to see. I'll check on Kevin while we get started.
All right, good. Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And let's kick this off, guys, by talking about who is the active adult today. So, Rob, you wanna start with this one? And that's a tough question, I know.
Yeah, today there's the generational way of looking at it. There's still silent generation that is part of the 55 plus. It's predominantly dominated by the boomer, the early wave and late wave boomers, and then the Xers are starting to move into that 55 plus space as well. They're turning 55. Over the past year, and will continue as we move forward. Within active adult itself, I think it's not necessarily a physical ability, it's a mentality, it's a life stage. It's what interests you and how do you go pursue it? And can you find a home and a community that helps you to pursue it? Whether that's just reading on your back porch, whether that's getting involved in groups within a community, whether that's lock and leave and you want to go travel. It's really, as you look at this stage of your life, what do you want to go do? How do you want to live that 30 years, maybe after the kids have moved away and before you're ready for the next stage that comes after that? What do you want to do? How do you want to live?
Absolutely. And then there's all the different types of living options. Do you want to jump into those and tell us more about that, Cameron?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what we've seen over, certainly the last several years, but even beyond, is just the migration towards the low cost, low maintenance living, right? I mean, they're not looking to be in these grand lifestyles. We were kind of talking prior to this about the villages, and just that whole model. I think there will always be a subset of the active adult buyer that is attracted to that lifestyle. But as we were saying, even from a community design perspective, a lot of the Del Webbs that have been coming in, and certainly, Crestwind's actually very much doing this as well, where they're not building these huge, 8, 10,000 home communities with, 40,000 square foot clubhouses and 3 golf courses. That was the model and had been for decades, for generations, really. But this new buyer is not really interested in that. They want intimacy. They want the ability to be, not nomadic, but they want to have options. They want to be able to go out and travel, and not just from an affordability perspective, but just peace of mind. When you've got a 3,000 square foot home that needs a lot of maintenance, when you're gone for 3 months in Europe, that's not conducive to this generation that's looking to purchase homes these days.
So, and I think the difference today, we had those big communities, right, that were built all around the golf course, but I'm seeing even in the master plan communities that are big communities, maybe it's a village within that community, because maybe you don't want tricycles and bicycles and sidewalk chalk right in front of your home, but you still want to be close enough to the grandkids and all that activity. And that, so it might be one village or pod or hub within like a master plan community that is age targeted or even age restricted.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what Crestwind Georgia at Twin Lakes has done. So Crestwind Georgia at Twin Lakes is that pod for just the active adults, and then Twin Lakes is a much bigger master plan community that has, homes that fit all different, lifestyles and walks of life. So, the nice thing about that is the kids can, buy the house with their kids and then go visit the parents over at Crestwind, drive their golf cart, across the community to go say hi, or drive their bikes. So we're getting in their car.
Yeah, I think that's also there's 2 factors at play there too. It's certainly what this new kind of wave and generation of active adult buyers want. They want that kind of inclusive but exclusive experience. They want to be able to go into their little enclave and not have the bikes on the streets, but they still want to be connected to the larger amenities and have the access to that for when the families or other, people come to visit. But that's a developer thing too. That's a risk aspect that became very, very apparent to the really big developers in 2008, when they had all of this, basically risk out there in these future lots that they were going to develop over the next 20 years, right? So yeah, there's still some models out there like that, but it's less popular, and you're finding a lot more of cooperation amongst other builders to kind of jointly go into a master plan community, and these kind of villages or the enclaves that you're talking about, Kimberly. That's I think we're going to see a lot more of that, because it reduces the builder's risk tremendously going into those types of situations.
Yeah, we have metro development here, and they're doing lagoons, so it's all live the vacation lifestyle without ever leaving your community, but it's families and the active adults. So, and both, again, age targeted. There are some that are just age targeted because the product lends itself more to that. But some of the village or the little pods, sections, whatever you want to call them, in those are actually age restricted. So it's an interesting blend, I think.
Yeah, we occasionally go into master plan communities, but I think the majority of ours are more infill type product, highly desirable areas. They're close to shopping, restaurants, hospitals, family. As you were talking about, Cameron, that's a huge part of it. But they're more 50 to 150 to 200 homes, and they're really intimate. One of the terms I've come up with is that we're a bed and breakfast community as opposed to a cruise ship. So there are cruise ship communities out there, and it's a very quick thing you can ask a buyer, which one would you rather do? Which one fits your personality better? And then we can say, if you're a bed and breakfast type of person, when we may have a great community for you. If you're more of a cruise ship, there might be other communities that might fit you better. So it's a really nice qualifier up front that can lead you in the right path.
I think that's an interesting point that, we've got So depending on which group you're looking at, and then even within that group, I mean, you can't just say because someone is the silent generation that now they're all going into these age restricted, the retirement home that is, it's a retirement home to assisted living to skilled nursing. Where, like my in-laws are starting to consider that now. And I find that interesting because they're in their late 80s and they're just now starting to consider that,
We have a lot of 85, 90-year-old buyers that don't want to live near old people, so they want to move in our communities. That's one of the things they vocalize. Yeah.
So I think we're all like fighting this whole aging thing. I mean, I'm Gen X, and when we start talking about, I'm not even really thinking about retirement. I still have I have a high school kid, but it's so I think we're gonna fight it. And Rob, I think you made an interesting point about the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. The youngest Golden Girl at the time that show started was 53, 54 years old. And you compare Blanche Dubois, if anybody knows the Golden Girls, my wife's watching it all the time, so I know what these people are, but you compare that to J-Lo today or Tom Cruise, it's a completely different outlook on life and how you want to live it.
50 is the new 40. So
absolutely. I totally agree. So I'm going to fight it every step of the way.
I think we all are. And I think we've got at least 3 Gen X on this, on this Zoom today. I think
I'm right in the middle.
Oh, we've just offended Angela MacKay. She does not want to be a Golden Girl. You are definitely a J-Lo, honey.
Oh, you're a J-Lo, J-Lo all the way. But it's really funny, to compare J-Lo to that group or, to compare. There's so many people out there you can compare. I mean, at 50 is just not what it was 20 years ago. So, and thank goodness for that, right? And I guess to that point, let's jump into messaging to active adults, because the messaging for Gen X is going to be very different than the messaging to the boomers. And I don't know at what point we really start to change that, but I can tell you, I have friends that are Gen X that are, I guess on the opposite side of the spectrum from you, Kimberly. They've now got their kids out of college. And I have friends that are downsizing or right sizing or just moving to a ranch home where they can put a pool in the backyard because they don't want to do stairs anymore. But it's going to be a little bit of a different message. You want to speak a little to that, Rob?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We started looking at it pretty heavily about 2 years ago. We worked with some generational experts around the country, Neil Howe and Warren Wright. And we really started looking about it 2 years ago. What do we need to be prepared for from a product standpoint, from a community development standpoint, to a messaging standpoint? And just little things like "you deserve this" as a message that really resonates with boomers, that really appeals to them in their mindset and what they're looking for. But as Xers are coming forward, that's not, I'm an Xer, I'm a solid Xer. And that's not one that's going to resonate with me. It's going to be more, you can afford this. It's a practical decision. This is something that's going to work for you in your life, and it's going to work for you financially as well. So there's going to be some shifts that we have to do at all levels of our businesses, the product, and down the line.
Well, even just changing the term, like from downsizing to right
sizing. Right.
Yeah. You can move to a home that's the exact same square footage, but will live a lot better. Open spaces, rooms that are designed by someone who kind of knows how the layout should be, where the cabinets should be, where the towels should be in the bathroom. Just designed properly so it lives better. And it may be the exact same, it might be a lateral move, but you move into it and it's just the home feels better and lives better for you on a daily basis.
Well, we moved this year, and that was, I kept telling everybody we were downsizing, but we really, I don't think 250 square feet counts as downsizing. I mean,
that's all you lost.
That's it, as far as square footage goes, but we did right size as far as maintenance. We no longer wanted to maintain the pool that we were not using in the backyard and, constantly worrying about all of those things. So, I think in that instance, even though I still have kids at home, I think that, that kind of fits that with that mentality. And again, it was, we can upgrade and yet, feel like that it's not something, that like
you're not sacrificing anything.
It was practical. It was the practicality of, we can have more experiences and trade off. So we're not having to pay for all these other things.
And I think, Kimberly, you're a perfect example. So talking about the right sizing, and you think about Gen Xers, we haven't collected all this stuff. We were all talking about this before the call about how mom shows up. And I know my mother is not listening to this, but if you watch the replay, I'm sorry, mom, I love you. She shows up and she brings me a whole set of Christmas dishes, or, some set of toys, or whatever it is she thinks that it is that I need or want. And, for the most part, I think most of us have already collected and taken what we want from our parents' homes. And, it's just a different mentality. People ask, what do you want for Christmas? I'm like, something that I can consume or enjoy, not anything I have to dust. And that's my standard answer. I don't want anything else in my house I have to dust. I have plenty of things to take care of. Most of them have 4 feet, so I don't need anything else to take care of. So, but I think that that's true of our whole generation. We don't want more stuff. We don't have stuff. So when we do right size, we're not necessarily having to get rid of stuff.
I got to tell you, the purge was like the most incredible thing, and I'm still purging, but the rate has certainly slowed down. I mean, it was like, even after we moved and we got in here and figured out what we needed and didn't need, there's constantly something going to the Salvation Army or Goodwill or,
Yeah.
So I have boxes going at all times in the car. So
yeah, I want to comment too, back to Rob's point. He was, talking about cruise ship versus bed and breakfast. And I think, we have over 700 agents we work with across the country, independent, real estate agents. And one of the bigger kind of messages that we really promote with them is, and they all get on this, is, when you're going into an active adult community, you're buying a lifestyle, and a home comes with it. And I think that's the biggest, paradigm shift that you can make with this buyer group right now, is that understand how they want to live. They don't want the stuff. They want low maintenance. The home is important and it's not irrelevant, but it's secondary. Mm-hmm. The lifestyle is the most important thing for them.
Yeah, when working with this buyer, I always said, find the right location. I used to do the northern home shows where we would go and, all the people would come through and learn about, where you were. And people would say, we're retiring to Florida in New York. And I'm like, well, which part? Well, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to get you have to get somebody to like narrow down, because obviously Florida is not just like one place.
Is Florida a big place, Kimberly?
It's kind of a big place. It's about 8 hours for me to drive to Miami. It's about 8 hours for me to drive up to Pensacola. So, that's a big stretch right there, and very different territory. So, yeah, understanding that life. What do you want to do? These are things that we have to really dig into. Are those factoring in, Cameron, to the search terms that people are using when they're starting to think about this? And what are they searching for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The amenities is probably one of the bigger areas that we can point to. Pickleball, right? Yep. I mean, everybody knows when you say that term, it just connotates. You just get this visual of these, young silver-haired folks playing whatever that looks like on an image. We're seeing some of the similar generic terms like, retirement communities in Tampa or 55 plus in Arizona. We do see a little bit more activity around, again, amenity searches. So, on our website, you can filter by, does it have a pool? Is it gated? Again, very lifestyle focused type, filters. And so when you're seeing search terms like, best communities for pickleball, that's lending itself to certainly a pretty big message that says, hey, this is the most important thing if that's how I'm, starting my research and my search. Low maintenance is another buzzword that we see around our search terms. Obviously pricing, Rob, you were making reference to that. Right now, especially with what's going on in this market and just the velocity at which we're seeing price increases, people are a lot more sensitive to that right now. So we're seeing terms like affordable homes or, I don't love this word, and none of us do in sales, but cheapest homes to buy in Arizona. Right. But those are the terms that they're searching for. And it's maybe that's, as a polished salesperson, you're not saying that, anything's cheap necessarily, but that's where they're starting from. That's their mentality that these buyers are starting their searches from.
That's interesting, because I can tell you, we don't ever use the word cheap in marketing. So I think it'd be interesting to see what Google picks, or what some of the sites pick as a result that's relevant to cheap.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that, I mean, who uses that as their search terms that they're putting in there, but it's a really valid point about the amenities and the lifestyle.
Mhm.
I think even scatter site builders who perhaps, maybe not are targeted, but have product that lends itself to the active adult. Maybe somebody wants to buy an infill or even own their own. I've seen a lot of subdivisions. I worked with a community with a builder in Virginia, and we'd see a lot of subdivisions like where they'd subdivide the family land. And then the parents were, one of the kids would take over like the parents' house, and the parents would build their house for their new style of life just right down the road, but they were close enough. So, I think all of those kind of factor in. So we need to be careful not to just think, oh, this is, somebody's going to retire on a beach in Florida, or they're going to go to the golf course community, and, still talk about maintenance free, about, being able to live the life, have freedom to travel, lock and leave, all of those things that are going to be really important to buyers, regardless of which age group they are.
Yeah, the mindset that everybody just retires to Florida, I don't think we'd have a business model if that was true, because we build in local markets. Columbus, 80% of our buyers are coming from within 3 to 5 miles.
Mhm.
They love where they live. They love the restaurants. They love the entertainment options. They've got family nearby. They don't want to move away from where they live. They just want to live better. They want something that's new, and they don't want to sacrifice anymore. They may have oftentimes the people that own the houses, they had to sacrifice for their kids. They had to have the home that fit for them in that life stage. Now they want what they want. They want something that fits how they want to live in the home style that they want to live in.
I think that brings to a good point. And Cameron, I think you were talking about this earlier about family, being close to family, and then that being a big priority for this buyer. And family is not just, your mother, sister, brother, son, daughter. It's now taken on friends. For a lot of us, we have friends that we consider to be like family, and we want to be close to them.
Yeah, I mean, again, that lends itself back into the lifestyle aspect. And I think, part of the urgency that we're seeing in this market is most of the active adults are, kind of closer to that age where they had to be a little bit more conscious about their health, last summer and into the latter part of 2020. And so they didn't get an opportunity to necessarily do the travel and go visit the family, maybe in, Texas or Florida or wherever they might be going. And they were kind of stuck back home. We see a lot of interest from the Northeast. It's the mass reshuffling, right? People who are leaving the city centers and coming down to the more rural areas and, want better lifestyle, which incorporates family. And, want to kind of go a little bit, sales here, on us is we think so often of the concept, especially with family, because I would say for the active adult, as far as our perspective and what we see, that is either number one or number two motive for somebody to want to move. And it is not necessarily that, it is that they want to be closer to family, but the bigger urgency there, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is that they're not with their family right now. And so I've heard countless examples from last summer where our agents are talking to these folks, and, they're opening up to them about situations where they couldn't go to their grandchild's 10th birthday party last July because they were on lockdown or they hadn't been vaccinated yet. And so the family motive has always been there. It's just amplified and magnified right now so much because I don't want to waste any more time, in an area that I don't really want to be in. I want to be there. And that's your urgency. It's not, yes, it is about getting to the family, but if you're trying to create or really enhance that urgency in the moment, that's what it is. It's that they're not with family. And how many more, 10th birthday parties are you willing to miss?
Yeah.
And that you're not going to know that unless you really ask and you really drill down to talk about, so, were you able to see your family during the pandemic, and were you separated from people? Because it's a huge, and that's going to stick with us far longer than COVID will. We'll get a handle on the whole COVID thing, but that memory of being isolated, of being separated from the ones we love and being able to safely interact with them, that's a big deal. I don't know that we psychologically get rid of that. I think this is a once in a generation thing that people are always going to refer to. Don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, from just a discovery perspective, on the sales side, if we get trained in new home sales, the critical path. I mean, most people understand what I mean by that. And we have our, steps that we follow that we're trained on, and you got to do, your discovery and your demonstration, home site selection, all that. The buyers have a critical path too. They have a perception of what they want to accomplish. And a lot of times, I'll take, for example, we're 2 years away from moving, right? I mean, for the salespeople on this call, how often do we hear that as an objection, if you will? Right. And I would say I reference this as the 80-10-10 rule. 10% of those folks are lying to you, right? They don't really, you're the scary salesperson. I don't want you to sell something to me that I don't really want to be in, and I'm gonna control this situation. The other end of the spectrum, it's the truth. We were talking about pensions and how those are becoming a little bit more archaic, but there are still some of those situations out there where, if I don't stay with my employer until, 2025, I won't get my pension. But that need of, and maybe it's not 80% in your opinion, but it's probably pretty close to the majority. They just don't know. And that's your job as a salesperson, to help them figure that piece out. And I coach with my agents all the time. Don't even ask them their time frame. Certainly up front. Don't get into that discussion on the first or second conversation, because when do you ever get the answer that you want to that question, right? For the Jeff Shore folks out here, Jeff always makes this reference to E.E. Cummings of the beautiful answer to those who ask the beautiful question. Well, if you're asking an ugly question, what are you going to get? You're going to get an ugly answer, right? I would put what's your time frame in the discovery, stage of your critical path as an ugly question, because you're imposing that on somebody who doesn't really know the answer to that. So just digressing here, being cognizant of what their motives are and what they're, again, kind of referencing the critical path is hugely important, because that's going to help you decide, where you take them from that point.
When I ask time frame questions, and Rob, maybe you probably with your agents do something similar, but when I ask time frame questions of this buyer, I'm like, what has to happen in your world before you make this move? Because that's very different for different buyers.
Yeah, our salespeople do an amazing job working with our buyers coming in. There's so much, for lack of a better term, therapy that has to go on
That's right.
with a 55 plus buyer. They've lived in their home for years. They've raised kids there. They may have buried a dog in the backyard. I mean, there's a lot of memories tied to their existing home. Right. So our salespeople have to go to that next level and help buyers get through the potential loss of where they've lived and the memories that they have before they're able to now take them on the journey to what could be in the future. If you don't deal with the first part, you're not going to get to the second part. So they're able to really work with our buyers and step through those areas. Then it's a matter of, okay, what's the discovery? What is it that you're looking for? What could change? What could be better? What have you always wanted but never had? Let's start to ask those discovery questions. And then it's what's the cost to you to wait longer? Now, cost immediately thinks financial. Well, we've all watched lumber go up and now going down. We've watched home prices escalate with competition. That's one aspect of it. But what does it cost you personally? How many more birthdays of your grandkids are you going to miss if you don't live near them? How many other important things in your life? The home itself, how many more flights of stairs do you want to climb before you don't have to do that any longer?
Right.
How much longer do you want to go without having an outdoor space that you can utilize and that's private for you? How much longer are you going to live in a community with people that you don't know anymore? It's transitioned, and there may be all the families and all the people you knew and used to have backyard parties with are no longer there. How much longer does it cost you personally? How much more does it cost you personally to stay where you are? And that's just that long form journey that our salespeople take our buyers through, and they're amazing at it.
Well, and that's just so true with the, fear of loss doesn't really matter to this buyer. And most salespeople, most general real estate agents are trained to talk about fear of loss. If you don't act now, this will happen.
Right.
You will lose. That does not appeal to this buyer. This buyer is what do I gain?
Right.
What will my life be like once I make this move? And so that's where we have to focus. So you're right. You're exactly right. These are let's do this kind of exploration about what does life look like after we make the move. And when you get them mentally there, then it's logistics, right? It's, now how do I get rid of the stuff? Now, how do I get there? It's a different leap.
Yeah, it's a different sense of urgency because they don't have to move.
They do not have to move.
They want
usually.
to move. Well, and you look at the last 18 months and the fact that you can now live anywhere and how that's, affecting all of this. I think that's what's making so many people, move and go closer to the grandkids or go closer to the parents, is that all the remote work has made the access so much easier and removed that one objection,
Yeah. When are you looking to move puts a time frame in that causes fear and anxiety. And that takes you away from positive feeling is what you want in this process. When you put artificial timelines, now anxiety comes into the mix. And that is, as you were saying, and Cameron was saying, just takes people in a completely different direction. When do you plan to buy? Okay, now you got a time frame going. That's all I'm thinking about, rather than the positive things that could come from a move.
Yeah, I'll put it in some other terms here too. Just, pressure is outward coming in, urgency is internal going out. And I think if you can, as a salesperson, you can understand the difference, because and really when you get down to urgency, there's really just two types of urgency. There's emotional urgency, which we're all talking about, and is the good type of urgency, but it's hard to find out what that is. I mean, these buyers don't want to give that. Not only do they not want to give that to you, I don't know if that's even a conscious thought for some of them, like I mentioned it is, but they just they haven't fully kind of discussed it and like vocalized it and formulated an exact thought about what it is that's actually driving them. So I would categorize that as emotional. The other side is the situational urgency, which, to your guys' points here, I mean, that's really hard in today's environment, because there is a lot of situational urgency. If you don't put an offer in on this home today, you will not get it. It's not that you probably won't get it, you will not get it, right? And that's situational urgency, and active adult buyers don't react very well to that. Interest rates are going to go up. This builder is offering a $5,000 incentive if you don't buy by the end of the month. Like, they've never really reacted well to that. And to Rob's point, it puts this kind of negative connotation and pressure around them that is really not necessary. And it's kind of lazy if you're a salesperson and you're just trying to put that in front of them to get them to make a purchase decision. You're not doing your job.
Well, it's that heavy-handed, like used car sales pressure technique. And, we know that doesn't work with Gen X, and I really don't think it works with the boomers either. So, all you're doing is really kind of pushing them away instead of, bringing them in.
It's very transactional and not about building a relationship with the buyer and really understanding their situation. But what have you seen now that, of course, we do have this whole craziness going on in the market. So what has this buyer's general reaction been? You've got so many agents across the country. Are they finding that buyers are going, you know what? Nope. Going to just sit this one out and see what happens.
Sure.
What are you seeing?
We are finally just starting to see that. And I say finally because I think that's a good thing for our market. We hadn't seen it, I think, for the last, let's say 10 months or so, because Builders still had a lot of inventory. They were able to still continue to sell through the end of last year. Carol, you had referenced Crestwind Twin Lakes. They were one of the very first communities. That's part of my region that I cover, and they were one of the very first communities where last summer they were on several month waiting lists, and so
still are.
Yeah, and most builders are at this point, and they're doing highest and best offers on specs. I mean, there's a lot of pressure right now, so I think kind of the availability of what was out there is dried up at this point for the most part. And so, there's another Del Webb, I won't say which one specifically, in the Midwest that they did a $20,000 base price increase 2 weeks ago. They did a $30,000 price increase 2 days ago. So $50,000 in less than a month. And I've got one of our agents out there, telling me that these buyers are like, she's crying, she's breaking down at she can't afford this house anymore. It's just out of her budget.
Yeah. When you do that, you wiped out a pipeline of prospects at that point. That's too much too fast.
And it is. And there's a side of it too. We do several webinars. I hosted one back in April where we were talking with some division president for Mattamy Homes out in Tucson. And we had some other builder reps on, and we were talking about, what's driving this for the builders. And in all honesty, there's a big part of it that's just margin protection. Right. The price of materials has gone up. The supply chains have put their whole business model in complete chaos. Mm-hmm. So they're really just trying to keep their head above water. Now, I don't know if that's the motive for Del Webb to go up, $50,000 in, 2 weeks. But there are real pressures on the builders that there's always this disconnect with, consumer knowledge and awareness and what's actually happening, perception versus reality. And that's tough right now. So I do think that the buyers are finally starting to become, educated and understanding what the real pressures and dynamics of this market are. And they're kind of finally using some reasoning to say, okay, this is crazy. Yes, I do still have an urgency, an emotional urgency, but it doesn't necessarily outweigh, what Rob was referencing, the cost and the fear aspect of it. I think it's an equation that's kind of becoming out of balance at this point.
I think we're seeing that in all generations. Rob, are you seeing buyers that are coming into your communities now and saying, I would love to move now, and I think that, I understand it's going to be tough to do, but I have a home to sell, and I don't know what to do in the meantime. Are you encountering that one a lot?
Yeah, most of our homes are pre-sell. We don't do a lot of inventory. Ours are all pre-sell. So that time to build the home actually allays a lot of those fears to sell a home. And in this market, everybody's selling within a day anyway with multiple offers. So that was a concern maybe 2 years ago, a little more than today. So that's not as much of an issue. Really they're coming in and seeing the prices escalate because as drywall went up and lumber went up and all of those other issues. I think, Cameron, you're spot on. Just in the last month, we saw a little bit of okay, things have gotten so high so quickly, we may need to take a breather. Just in the last month, we're starting to feel a little bit of that. There was so much pent-up demand in the market at all levels. I believe our market was a little bit delayed. So there was some watching of COVID. There was some watching of political components to this. And then right in that December, January timeframe, we all across the board started to take off. So it's been a very good year for us and all of our franchise builders this year. And then it's also geographic as well. Our franchise builders in Dallas aren't having any softening at all. So there are some geographic components of it to it. But I do agree that there is a little bit of pushback, I think, that's happening right now. That the major slack was taken care of, and now we're moving into the next phase.
Is there any concern with your builders who, because you are a to-be-built market, and these buyers that haven't sold their homes yet because they don't want to move twice and they're like, oh, my home will sell in 5 minutes. If the market cools, is there some concern that builders may be left with some inventory, that people may bail?
Yeah, that's why primarily we don't do a lot of inventory. We
Right.
sell it, we market it and sell it first, then we go build it, which is probably the opposite of a lot of the other builders in the market. So we do a couple spec homes, and they're primarily just to be models so people can physically walk and see it. But there's not that huge outlay of a home that might sit there for our builders for
Yeah.
eternity.
Yours are mostly the building construction perm, so they're the buyer is getting the financing and the builder's doing draws, or are they in loans?
That's a little bit technical on the financing side.
Because
I'm a
the
marketing
risk is
guy, not a
different.
financing guy,
Yeah,
so,
well, the risk
yeah.
is different on both of those is my point. So if a builder's building this home and financing it themselves, that buyer could then have that option to walk. And so that may be, that may be concern.
We're seeing that in the market for sure, Kimberly, where a lot of builders are putting escalation clauses in their agreements. We're seeing a number of national builders actually who are deciding to forego any to-be builds, and all they're going to do for the next, I don't know if you guys are familiar with LGI. They're a Texas-based company out of Houston, and they've been around forever, 10, 15 years. And this has been their model. They don't even have a sales office. They don't have models. They just build specs. Now they're a little bit different where they are standardized options across the entire product line, but builders are so, there's a lot of builders that are so pressured right now with the expense of just building a house that it makes more sense for them, even if they don't fully complete it, but get it to drywall, get it to countertops,
And then
we're seeing that a
pricing.
lot. Yeah.
and then they can market the home responsibly at a price that they know works, and they can deliver that home in a much shorter period with better expectations, because you've got some folks in this, Del Webb that I was referencing is not only are they raising their prices 50 grand, but they don't know when they're going to build your home. It could be 12 months, maybe 18. I don't know, might be 20, 24, but we'll let you know soon enough.
And we're seeing a lot of the bigger builders go to that model I just got an open letter from the division president of DR Horton here that we're not selling anything until frame stage, no more to be builds. We will not sell you a home to order.
Yep.
That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing nationwide is, we've got clients that pulled every single listing out of the MLS and pulled all their pricing off their website, and just trying to get, into a construction schedule that once they really know what the home's going to cost and they feel like they're far enough along, then they'll put them back out there and list them for sale.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody's just tired. There's just too many questions, questions of
and that'll settle. I mean, we're already seeing lumber futures are going down, or they went down, which is, I think, a bigger sign of the economy, not just the housing market. If commodity prices had maintained that trajectory, certainly, but even plateaued, we would be big. It'd be a strong indicator that we're going into an inflation period. And the risk with that is that interest rates would stay incredibly low, which sounds kind of silly for me to say, that's a bad thing, but we need a little bit of a bump on the rates. I think that will help slow this down just enough so we can have some breathing room here to actually see because I know we say this, or the media says this and agents say it, we're not in an inventory shortage. NAR is projecting that we will sell more homes this year than we've ever sold in the 40 years of tracking that data. So the number of transactions will be incredibly high this year. It's just that the demand is so much higher, driven by a myriad of factors. I think if that demand starts to responsibly retract and it doesn't just fall off a cliff, because that's the big fear, right? If it all of a sudden just dries up today, that's what we're talking about with builder exposure. I don't think that will happen personally, just my personal opinion for reference there. I think this is different than what happened in 2007 and 8. Mm-hmm. That was speculation, investor driven, crazy mortgage programs and access. That's not the case in this market. And could it dry up rapidly? Sure. I think we'll go into an easing of a more balanced market, and maybe we tip down into a little bit more of a buyer's market for a bit. But I think that, interest rates are a big piece of this for sure.
Yeah, and
And
the
they-
market's
and they went
very
up.
sensitive. Well, and you see that home sales drop off a little bit every time they tick up, and it doesn't
Correct.
take much of an uptick for that
It
to
doesn't.
happen.
Yeah, but we're going up to 3.02. I mean, let's
I
keep this in
know, but
perspective. I mean, come
It's a
on.
historical, what is it? Like
Yeah.
a 50-year low or something still, but yeah, it's crazy.
It's completely insane. Let's go as we're wrapping up here. Let's go back to talking about, the resistance that this buyer, and I think maybe we break this out generationally, that this buyer has to making the change. So, for Gen X, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that Gen X has the same resistance that the boomers did, because again, what we were talking about with the stuff and yeah, I think it might even be easier. Maybe I'm just biased because I am an X. So,
Well, I was just going to say we're more access to travel is more affordable and available. I mean, I fly a lot for my job. I've got companion pass with Southwest. I can literally pick up and go, anywhere in the country at a very low cost. And I think that's a distinct difference between the boomers and X is Generation X has kind of grown up with that access, whereas the boomers didn't. So our mentality of maybe living up in Chicago and I could live anywhere I want is a much easier thought to process than what the boomers were, processing years ago. So I do think that combined with an access to technology, we've got agents who are boomers and they have I'm generalizing here, but they have a bit of a blind spot on technology from a paradigm perspective, thinking, oh, I shouldn't text my clients because they don't text. Well, that's not true.
Right.
You may not text because you're a boomer and you just never, adopted that type of technology, very simple technology, right? But that's one very small, concise example of the broader access that Generation X has to not just technology, but information. And when you combine all of it together and some of their mindsets that they have about just life and experiences, it just lends itself to a little bit looser, kind of penchant for adventure. It's not a restrictive, static thing that I'm going to work for 40, 45 years, then I'm going to retire. There's this fluidity that kind of goes back and forth in their lifestyle. And that's what we're seeing a lot of in this buyer group.
I think that's important to keep in mind, like with the style of the homes, right, Rob?
Right.
With how people are going to live is just really changed inside the home, not just the amenities.
Yeah, very much. We wire the homes and have everything pre-built so that if they want to add technology after they've moved in, it's up to them. They don't have to invest in it up front. But that becomes more and more important to the Xers. We either built or have adapted to all the toys everybody's playing with. So as a generation, anything that came along, we just quickly adopted it, started to deploy it and moved forward. And that gives us a leg up on utilizing it from a marketing perspective and also understanding the buyers and how they want to move into the homes, home security systems, technology for your computer, for music, all things above. It's going to be more and more important for the Xers as they move into this space.
And outdoor living, the inside is moving out, and that's a total lifestyle, I think, for this generation that's coming. So
it's about, my final thought is, it's about damn time somebody focuses on Generation X. They've forgotten about us. CBS did a whole report and forgot about Gen X and completely left them out. And
you just needed a webinar with a bunch of Xers on it.
That's right. It's about time.
We're the latchkey kids, right? So we're the independent generation. We were taught, you fend for yourself.
Fend for yourself.
We didn't have helicopter mom. What? Yeah, So it's and the millennials, of course, as they come along, it's going to be really interesting to see this all blend together, at least in my opinion. So,
well, I'll make one final comment on that. They're all connected, right? Because the people who are buying the Gen X homes are the millennials. And if they're not in the market and they're not going strong, which they are now, we're finally seeing that. then our, this is, I'm kind of, putting aside what's happened, I guess, the last 12 months, because that's just unique. But leading up into that point, that was critical, that generation, for getting into the market, so that it freed up the Generation Xers to go do what they wanted to do, without having to, not be able to sell their house or whatever the circumstance was for them.
You're absolutely right. It only took them, 7 to 9 years longer to buy their first home than it did all of us.
It really did.
Which, it's fine. They've been focused on different things, and, it all works out, but it's just interesting to see the different, dynamics and different stages of life.
And it was hard to blame them. I mean, they were, young adults and teenagers in the recession. And so, the American dream literally fell apart in front of them, and they watched their parents go through one of the worst financial periods in our history.
Correct.
Certainly our, generations. And, I can't say that I would blame them if I saw my parents go through a bankruptcy because the housing market crashed and they lost their job and we had to move. And that was just a very shocking experience for them. And they really had no interest in engaging with that at a young age. So, that's the theory, at least at this point.
Combine that with college debt, and there you go. Perfect.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other variable.
Just to bring up a point we were talking about before the webinar began, is the home building industry as a whole has been very laser focused on the boomers since the day they were born.
Right.
And since the 40s, 50s, it was young families having babies. It was the boomers. We had to build houses and developments for that group. Then they were the first time buyers, and they were the move up buyers. Now they're in the 55 plus space. So as they start to exit from the home buying industry, the home building industry, we've all got to take a look at, okay, what's left, and how do we maybe need to change our ideas of what historical norms in home building are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the historical norms are all based on one generation that's been going through the process.
Yep.
And then what do we do after that? And I think that's where the ideas are starting to formulate now, of how the whole industry is going to be needing to change with the generations that are left.
Yeah, you made great points. I just really hadn't thought about it, as it was all focused on this one generation. And, so much of the, housing code and, zoning and all of that, we all know it has to change. We need to be looking at, building for everyone and having, townhomes next to single family homes, next to apartments, and everybody being able to live together in those same spaces and making it all work. And so much of what's out there right now just doesn't fit that mold.
The subdivisions of one home on 1 acre that all the zoning laws were built for in the 80s as the move-up buyers were in place, that's not what a lot of the buyers want today.
Nope.
I would think the millennials don't want to take care of a yard that big.
No.
I'm tired of taking care of a yard that big. Yeah.
My yard's bigger than all of y'all's.
But even like some of this commercial space, and just thinking outside the box. So it isn't that it's, I am starting to see some of the master plans with apartment communities and townhomes mixed in with single family. I don't think that's enough. I think we have to go further and look at, some of these malls and some of that space and changing that up too. But we could have a whole new webinar on just that and what we think the zoning laws need to change. We are at the top of the hour. So Rob and Cameron, you're awesome. So thank you very much for your perspective. And if anybody has any questions, I will be getting the recording out to everybody who registered and attended. And I'll put everybody's contact information in that email as well. So look for that in the next 24, 36-ish hours, depends on how long it takes to edit the video. So, and everybody have a great weekend.
Happy weekend.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Happy early 4th of July.